Summary of Beyond the Gates for the week of February 23rd to 27th. Anniversary week brings Anita's public reveal, Haley under fire, and Kott's confrontation. As Beyond the Gates celebrates its first anniversary, Anita goes public with a deeply personal truth, Gayle King appears, and multiple confrontations reach a breaking point. In the week of February 23rd to 27th, BTG will feature a special guest appearance by renowned CBS Mornings co-host Gayle King. She will be there to interview Articulate's most prominent figure, Anita Williams Dupree. After everything that happens this week, Anita decides to publicly reveal her cancer diagnosis, and she feels she needs King's help to do it. Next week on BTG may explode in a very dangerous way, not only because major events happen back-to-back, but because nearly every storyline pushes the characters into choosing between protecting themselves and protecting the people they love, between truth and self-interest, between honor and survival. The spoilers for February 23rd to 27th suggest that the main axis of the week will revolve around three overlapping layers of conflict. Anita turning her illness into a public social act, Joey along with Bill and Haley sinking deeper into a web of power manipulation, and Kott, Leslie, Eva, and Jacob being pulled into a cluster of secrets that are both personal and legal, possibly tied to the clinic, an old accident, and even an undercover mission spiraling out of control. Public spoilers from multiple sources also align on key points such as Anita meeting Gayle King, Joey staging an escape, Bill becoming furious over new information, Kott making Tomas an offer, and the Kott-Leslie-Eva conflict escalating by the end of the week. So this is almost certainly the backbone of the week's story. From a logical story perspective, Anita's decision to reveal her cancer diagnosis at this exact moment is likely not just a choice born of personal courage. It feels more like a proactive move to seize control of the narrative before someone else tells her story for her. Anita is the kind of character who understands that in a power-heavy community like Fairmont Crest, silence is not always dignity. Sometimes it is simply an empty space for other people to set traps. After everything Leslie has done, and with the family's conflicts constantly spilling into public battlegrounds, Anita may have realized that if her illness leaked out in a distorted way, it would not only hurt her but also become a weapon used against the entire family. Her interview with Gayle King, then, is both an inspiring moment and a strategic preemptive strike. Anita defines herself before others reduce her to gossip. But that choice also opens a very real danger, because the more she appears in public, the more the media and the community will scrutinize everything around her, her family, her relationships, internal conflicts, and the names that always stand closest to the center of the storm. The most frightening part is not Anita speaking about cancer, but the chain reaction afterward. The whole city wakes up. Every eye turns to the Dupree family, and secrets that survived in the shadows begin to lose their hiding places. The spoiler specifically saying Anita's interview becomes a citywide call to action suggests the impact will go far beyond a personal health struggle and touch a larger community issue. Possibly healthcare, unequal access to treatment, or a lack of transparency in a system tied to the other storylines. At the same time, the robbery case involving Haley seems to make a breakthrough, which sounds like good news on the surface, but in typical BTG fashion, a breakthrough often smells more like a setup than justice. Placed next to the fact that Joe uses his influence the very next day to stage an escape, it becomes likely that the robbery is no longer a single isolated crime, but something someone is using as a tool to push the police, lawyers, or a family into an investigation path that benefits a certain side. Joey is the type who only acts when he sees value on both ends, helping one person escape while forcing another person into debt. So the escape he arranges may not simply be about saving someone, but about removing a link that could expose the truth about the robbery or the person behind it. If the one being moved is a low-level pawn, Joe protects the layer between himself and the scandal. If it is a witness, he is choosing power over justice. And if the plan is exposed, the first thing Joey loses may not be money, but his ability to control people through the image of being a reliable middleman. In BTG's world, Once someone is seen as an obvious manipulator, both sides start hunting them at once. Bill receiving information that makes him furious on the same day Joey takes action is an especially important detail because it suggests parallel storytelling. Joey is pulling strings backstage, while Bill is beginning to realize he has been pushed out of the game. Bill's anger likely does not come from a simple piece of bad news, but from the feeling of betrayal, of being outmaneuvered by the very people he believed he could use. If the information is tied to Haley, it could mean she hid part of the truth about the robbery, or that she has been exposed as being under Lynette's influence. If it is tied to Joey, Bill may realize that the favor he thought he controlled has been turned into a chain around his own neck. If it concerns family secrets, the anger becomes even darker, because Bill would not just be enraged over unstable power, but over his role as the family authority being threatened. The strength of this storyline is that the angrier Bill gets, the more likely he is to make mistakes. He may react too quickly, pressure the wrong person, push Haley or Joey at the wrong time, and accidentally reveal that he knows more than he should. That opens the possibility that Bill, this week, will not just be reacting to crisis, but actively igniting his own collapse. Haley trying to meet Lynette's demands is a small detail but an extremely dangerous one, because it confirms Haley is in the weaker position within a deeply unequal power dynamic. Psychologically, this is exactly the kind of pressure that pushes a character into a downward spiral. She wants to prove she is not being controlled, yet she has to do exactly what someone else asks in order to protect herself. If Lynette is pressuring Haley to alter testimony, move money, meet someone, stay silent about a detail in the robbery, or even perform the role of victim in a way that serves a larger plan, then Haley is heading into extreme emotional strain. The harder she tries to satisfy Lynette, the more she loses agency, and every decision creates another weakness someone else can exploit. That is why, if Bill is already furious and starts noticing Haley acting strangely, the odds of an explosion between them become very high. One person wants control through direct force, the other is already being controlled from behind the scenes. The collision between them could make Haley the fastest breaking link in the whole conspiracy chain. Vanessa asking Donald for help is the kind of storyline that can easily produce a major emotional turn. The question you raised whether Vanessa may be trying to hide a pregnancy or even ask for help with an abortion is completely logical within the structure of this week, because it matches a common BTG pattern, introducing a personal favor right when the families are in chaos, then turning it into a moral detonator. If Vanessa really is pregnant and not ready to reveal it, she would not only fear public judgment, but also fear losing control of her own life to family, friends, or the men involved. She may turn to Donald because he is discreet, practical, and loyal enough not to judge her immediately. But the more secretive the request is, the more dangerous it becomes. If Donald agrees to help, he steps into a moral gray zone and must hide something that could reshape multiple relationships. If he refuses, he may push Vanessa into panic and drive her toward a more reckless choice. Worse, if what Vanessa wants is not medical help at all, but help hiding someone, moving information, or contacting someone connected to the robbery or Joey, then this personal matter immediately connects to the larger conspiracy arc. What makes Vanessa's storyline so unsettling is that it always looks soft on the outside, but even one small secret can drag many people down with it. Kat's offer to Tomas on Tuesday sounds very much like a temporary alliance, but Kat's nature is rarely temporary in any simple sense. Kat usually makes offers as a way of testing loyalty, and if Tomas accepts, he may become trapped in a web of obligations that is hard to escape. The offer may involve working together against Leslie and Eva, collecting information about the clinic, or retracing old events connected to Laura. Tomas may agree for immediate gain, but he likely has his own agenda too, especially since this week's storyline suggests the clinic and Laura's accident are surfacing at the same time. If Tomas knows more than Kat thinks he does, he may view her offer as a chance to stand between two sides and preserve his own balance. But that is a dangerous game, because Cod is carrying accumulated anger, and people who have been suppressing anger for a long time often react in extreme ways when they feel used. An alliance like this will not last. It will survive only long enough to create a betrayal with even worse consequences. By Wednesday, the conflict between Eva and Leslie at the clinic is almost certainly no longer about professional differences. The spoiler emphasizes that they do not agree on the clinic's direction and that their argument becomes more direct, which strongly suggests the clinic is just the public face of a much larger power struggle. Eva may represent a practical, transparent approach, or at least someone trying to preserve the clinic as a real healthcare space. Leslie, on the other hand, may see it as an image tool, a platform for influence, or even a place to bury issues that should never be dug up. If someone is lying in this argument, it may well be both of them, but in different ways. Eva hides part of the truth to protect the clinic, while Leslie distorts the truth to protect power. That is why, once Cod steps into this storyline, she will not simply see a disagreement, she will smell concealment. And once Cod starts sensing deception, she will pursue it to the end, even if it means burning the last bridge she has with family or old allies. That same day, Jacob being on an undercover mission and unexpectedly running into someone he knows could shift the direction of the entire week. The spoilers only say Jacob is undercover and meets a familiar face, but fan discussions have already floated the possibility that the encounter involves Isaiah or some larger network, suggesting this is not a minor moment. The danger of undercover work is not simply being recognized by an enemy, but being seen by someone who knows you in another identity. If the familiar face is someone Jacob trusts, he will be trapped, tell the truth and compromise the mission, lie and damage the relationship. If it is someone tied to him emotionally, the shock becomes even more powerful because Jacob has to choose between duty and personal history. The fact that Naomi later tells Ashley about Jacob moving away in Thursday's episode makes this even more suspicious, because it creates the sense that Jacob is being forced to pull back, relocate, or separate from his old environment to avoid exposure. In other words, that unexpected encounter while undercover may be the direct reason Jacob has to move, and Naomi becomes the one forced to deliver the bad news to Ashley. Ashley and Shanna's reminiscing during Ashley's work anniversary may look like a quiet moment on the surface, but in a week like this, quiet scenes are often used to underline hidden pain. If Ashley is facing the possibility of Jacob leaving, or has already sensed a growing emotional distance, then revisiting the past with Shanna's will not feel like simple nostalgia. It will feel like taking inventory of her life. She may realize that what she built through patience and resilience is now being pulled off balance by secrets she is not allowed to know. Shanna's, in the role of companion, may comfort her while also unintentionally touching a memory that unsettles Ashley, especially if it reminds Ashley of past moments when she ignored warning signs in family or love. This is one of the things BTG often does well, turning a seemingly gentle scene into an emotional unlocking point, so the character makes a more extreme choice immediately afterward. If Ashley feels she is always the last to be told the truth, she may react harshly when Naomi tells her about Jacob, not because of the move itself, but because of that deeper feeling of being pushed out of the center of the truth. Derek making a career decision on the same day could easily connect to the same sense of helplessness. His choice might involve changing direction, quitting, or accepting a new position that looks like opportunity, but is really a way to escape pressure. If Derek is in a state of needing to prove himself, he will be especially vulnerable to choices that promise quick control. The problem is that in a week when so many secrets are shifting, a rushed career move could drag Derek into a new conflict with Ashley, Shanna's, or even the people he thinks are his allies. When someone is internally unstable and tries to save themselves through a major decision, the result is often not freedom but a deeper entanglement in another power structure. Thursday is when everything starts becoming openly public. Anita's interview is no longer just a TV appearance. It becomes a citywide call to action. That can force many characters to reveal who they really are. The sincere ones will stand beside Anita, but anyone hiding something related to systems, money, image, or sensitive scandals will begin to fear the community way, bringing the wrong kind of attention. In that context, Leslie deciding to handle her own promotional effort sounds like a reflex to compete for the spotlight. Leslie is not likely to accept someone else becoming the moral center of the community, especially if she herself is being cornered over the clinic or her tangled relationships. Self-promotion at this moment may be an attempt to reclaim control of the narrative, but it is also likely to backfire because the public is highly sensitive to authenticity right now. If Leslie is seen as exploiting Anita's illness to elevate herself, she will face a strong backlash, and it may make her even more aggressive when she returns to confront Cod and Eva. Donnie and Andre having to deal with an uninvited guest is perfect fuel for the family storyline. This guest could be someone bringing information, someone collecting on a debt, or someone connected to an old secret that both believed was buried. What is especially interesting is that the spoiler places this situation right next to Leslie's self-promotion. So it is entirely possible the two are directly connected, perhaps someone sent to apply pressure, test a reaction, or damage the family's image while public attention is focused on Anita. If Donnie and Andre already have underlying tension, the unexpected visit will expose their different instincts. One wants to confront the issue immediately, while the other wants to hide it to keep the peace. That difference is what creates the real conflict, because in a crisis, people often do not break apart because of an outside enemy, but because they realize the person beside them no longer sees right and wrong the same way. Laura's unresolved accident from a year ago making Cod furious at the same moment she is clashing with Leslie and Eva is a strong sign that these storylines are almost certainly about to merge. Cod is not simply angry because of grief, she is angry because she has likely learned something new, possibly a file, testimony, medical data, or a detail hidden within the clinic. If Laura was connected to a medical decision, an authored record, a delayed response, or a witness who was silenced, then Cod's anger shifts from personal sorrow to the realization that she may have been deceived for an entire year. And when someone discovers that their pain was managed by others like a public relations risk, the reaction can be explosive. That is why the Cod-Leslie-Eva confrontation on Friday is already being set up as a major escalation. Cod is no longer arguing to win. She is attacking to force the truth into the open. Naomi telling Ashley about Jacob moving away on Thursday is another detail that could create a chain reaction into Friday. If Jacob's move is voluntary, Ashley will still be hurt by being left behind. But if it is a move forced by undercover work, or because Jacob almost lost his cover after meeting someone familiar, then the news carries the weight of sacrifice and deception. Naomi often ends up in the middle, trying to keep balance, but the more she tries to hold the middle, the more likely both sides are to see her as withholding something. Ashley may begin to view Naomi as someone who knows more but says less, which creates yet another layer of betrayal. This is the kind of slow-burning conflict BTG excels at. No one in the scene is completely villainous, but everyone leaves out part of the truth. And that missing part cracks trust faster than any scandal. By Friday, Nicole and Ted, both worrying about their daughter, will likely become a convergence point for many of the week's pressures. The concern may be about health, emotional distress, or their daughter being pulled into adult secrets. But what matters most is that Nicole and Ted rarely see family crises from exactly the same perspective. One may frame it as protecting the family image, while the other sees it as preserving emotional safety. If their daughter is connected to the clinic, Laura's accident, someone in the Joey Bill Haley orbit, or simply the emotional fallout of all the scandals building around the family, then Nicole and Ted worrying together may quickly turn into quiet blame about parenting, secrecy, or old choices. When parents do not agree on how to protect a child, the child often becomes the final battlefield for fear. And that kind of emotional tragedy fits perfectly with BTG's end-of-week rhythm. The confrontation between Cod, Leslie, and Eva escalating on this same day may be the true climax of the week. After building anger from Laura's case, suspicion around the clinic, and relationship shocks from earlier in the week, Cott will likely no longer accept half answers. Leslie will strike back by using image, status, or even Cott's personal vulnerabilities to destabilize her. Eva may stand in the middle, trying to prevent disaster while still unable to tell the whole truth. So the more she tries to calm things down, the more Cott sees her as complicit. This situation could easily escalate to a file being snatched away, an accusation blurted out in front of the wrong person, or a key detail about Laura being exposed in a moment of rage. And once that happens, the clinic storyline will stop being an internal conflict and become a community issue, especially in a week when Anita has already turned public attention toward larger social concerns. Smitty reconnecting with an old friend may seem disconnected, but it could actually serve as the missing piece mechanism of the week. In soap storytelling, reunions with old friends are rarely just nostalgia. They are often a way to introduce a witness, a forgotten memory, or a perspective that was buried. If this old friend knows something related to Jacob, Isaiah, the clinic, or a past event in Fairmont Crest, then Smitty may accidentally become the keeper of information powerful enough to shift the entire game. The problem is that Smitty usually acts from emotion more than strategy, so if he handles the information with trust rather than caution, he may be used or dragged into trouble he never intended to enter. This meeting could be a gift of fate, but it could also be the hook that pulls a seemingly calmer storyline into psychological warfare. Vanessa encouraging her best friend at the end of the week is another subtle but important sign. If that friend is standing on the edge of a reckless decision, Vanessa's encouragement may accidentally become permission to do something irreversible. This is one of BTG's favorite emotional paradoxes. The right comfort at the wrong time, given without full information, can push someone into a terrible choice. If Vanessa herself is carrying a secret from earlier in the week, the advice she gives will likely reflect her personal fear more than clarity. She may urge someone to keep quiet, endure a little longer, or handle things alone, because that is exactly what she is doing. That makes Vanessa's storyline both sad and dangerous at once. She wants to save someone, but she is moving from an unstable emotional place. Chelsea having a major conflict with her cousin, along with Isaiah receiving a sudden request to meet, are two strong closing beats for the week because they create the sense that both small family secrets and private meetings are being pushed by a larger invisible force. Chelsea's conflict may start as a misunderstanding, but if it becomes major, then something long buried is almost certainly involved money, loyalty, or a family truth kept hidden too long. In a week where everyone is already emotionally exposed because of Anita, the robbery, and the clinic, one sentence hitting the right old wound is enough to trigger an explosion. As for Isaiah, the unexpected meeting request could be an opportunity, a warning, or exactly the trap you suggested. If it ties back to the person Jacob ran into while undercover, Isaiah may unknowingly become a critical link in a much larger case. If he goes alone, he puts himself at risk. If he refuses, he may miss his chance to learn the truth. And if he goes while already suspicious, he enters the meeting in a defensive state, which could provoke the other person into reacting first. Overall, this week of BTG will likely not give viewers a single explosive climax and then resolution, but rather a tightening chain of pressure. Anita opens the door to public truth through courage. But that same door lets light flood into dark corners where many people have been surviving on secrecy. Joey and Bill react with power, but the more they use power, the more their panic shows. Cott moves from suspicion to anger, then from anger to direct confrontation. Jacob, Ashley, Naomi, and Isaiah are pulled into choices with no safe options left, and Vanessa, Haley, Chelsea, and others who seem like secondary players may actually be the most emotionally fragile points because they are carrying the consequences of conspiracies built by other people. If BTG keeps its usual pacing, the week's end will not resolve every secret, but it will make one terrifying truth much clearer. Many people in Fairmont Crest have started acting as if there is no way back, and when an entire powerful community loses the ability to turn around. Tragedy usually does not come from one villain alone, but from layers of selfish decisions collapsing on top of each other.